Hello everyone, welcome to ISCA revision classes and initiative by CA Ravi Agarwal sir. You're with me, Pavitra, and today we'll be revising chapter number 4, which is Business Continuity Planning and Disaster Recovery Planning. I hope you all have your study material in hand, and without any further delay, let us jump into the revision lecture. Business continuity planning and disaster recovery planning. Why do we need a continuity planning? Because whatever happens, life has to go on. And this applies for business as well. And they must be able to provide the services on a 24/7 basis without any disruptions. So, why do we need a business continuity management? Because it helps us to meet the objectives of the enterprises, to meet the enterprise business objectives, and to ensure continuity of services. That is, the services are available 24/7. Let us understand some of the key terms related to BCM. One is business contingency. So what is a business contingency? A business contingency is an event with the potential to disrupt the computer operations. So a business contingency is an event with the potential to disrupt the computer operations. So what is a BCP process? A BCP process is designed to reduce the risk of an enterprise. So this is what BCP and DRP focuses about. They will want to identify the critical aspects and reduce the risk that is associated with them and continue the services and provide them 24/7. So BCP process is designed to reduce the risk of an enterprise. What is a BCP in first hand? What is a business continuity planning? It refers to the ability of an enterprise to recover from a disaster and continue with least impact. So a disruption is going to happen, but they'll have to recover from the disaster and continue the business with a very least impact. That is what BCP is all about. Let us see it once again. A business contingency is an event with the potential to disrupt. A contingency is an event with the potential to disrupt the computer operations. So what is a BCP process? It is a process designed to reduce the risk. What is a BCP? It is the ability of an enterprise to recover from the disaster and to continue the operations with a very least impact. So to have all these things, it should be written down and it should be documented so that we can just go and take it and verify, oh, this has to be done. So Bcp Manual is a document which is for our reference. Let us go into it. A Bcp Manual is a documented descriptions of the actions to be taken and resources to be used and the procedures to be followed before, during, and after an event. So a BCP manual is a documented descriptions. Everything has to be documented. We can't just put it in words. It is going to be going away with the wind. So a BCP manual is a documented descriptions of actions to be taken, resources to be used, and procedures to be followed. So what are those actions, resources, and procedures? BCP manual is documentation of the actions, resources, and procedures to be followed, resources to be used, and actions to be taken before, during, and after an event. So what does this is dealing with? What are the contents? It is expected to specify the responsibilities of the BCM team. So we have another new concept, which is the BCM team. So there's going to be a BCM team and their responsibilities are going to be put in our BCP manual. The next one, what are the users of business continuity? Why should there should be a continuity of a business? What are people going to get out of it? So the advantages of BCM are that the enterprise is able to proactively assess the threat and the potential risk. So because of BCM, you're able to identify, okay, this is our threat and these are our risks. And then we can contain the damage and minimize the impact. So we know our threat and the risk, and hence we can contain the damage and minimize the impact. Next comes is able to demonstrate a response through process of regular testing and training. So we can also demonstrate this response. So what happens, we can also know it through by providing regular testing and trainings. So the advantages of business continuity is that it helps us to assess the threat and the potential risk and to know about the damages and to minimize the impact, and also it helps in providing testing and trainings. That is for business continuity. Next comes another term, Bcm Policy. We have seen about Bcp Manual, which is our documented descriptions of the actions to be taken, resources to be used, and procedures to be followed. Next comes another new term, Bcm Policy. So what is a Bcm Policy? This policy document is a high-level document which shall be a guide to make a systematic approach to bring about the awareness. It serves as a guide and also brings about the awareness among the persons. So BCP policy is a high-level document. It is made by the top management and it serves as a guide for a systematic approach for disaster recovery and brings about the awareness. So what is a BCM policy? High-level document, guide for systematic approach for disaster recovery, and brings about awareness. Okay, this is about the BCM policy. Okay, next, what is a business continuity planning? This is the crux of our chapter, business continuity planning. What is a business continuity planning? It is a creation and validation of practical logistical plan for how an enterprise will recover and restore partially or completely interrupted critical functions. So one thing is that an disaster is going to happen. There might be some damages. So how do we minimize such damages? How do we recover from it soon? And how do we resume our operations with the less lag in time is what business continuity all brings about. So business continuity planning has three kids. Let us say that. Business continuity planning has three kids. One is the business resumption planning. Next is the disaster recovery planning. And next is crisis management. Business resumption planning. How fast do we resume our business? Disaster recovery planning. Something happens. How are we going to recover from it in the first hand? Crisis management. How do we manage such a crisis from when it happens? So business continuity planning has three keys. Who are they? Business resumption planning, disaster recovery planning, and crisis management. Let us look into all of those. Business resumption planning. This is the operations piece of business continuity planning. Okay, this is the operational aspect of the business continuity planning. Disaster recovery planning. This is a technical aspect of business continuity planning. So operational aspect is business resumption planning. Technical aspect is disaster recovery planning. And the advanced planning and the prevention necessary to minimize the loss and ensure continuity of critical business functions of the organization in the event of disaster. So disaster recovery planning, the main objective is to minimize the losses and continuity of critical business functions. That is the mission critical aspects. We all have like value added, non-value added, we have seen in other subjects, and here we are splitting it into critical items and non-critical aspects of a business. And BCP, DRP always focus and only focuses on the critical aspects. So business resumption planning is about the operational piece of BCP, and DRP is the technical aspect. Operational aspect of business resumption planning. Technical aspect is disaster recovery planning. And next is the crisis management. This is the overall coordination of an organization's response to a crisis. So how are they going to respond on the phase of a crisis? In a timely manner, with the goal of avoiding or minimizing the damage to the organization's profitability, reputation, and ability to operate. So crisis management is the overall coordination of the organization's response. So this is like the overall manual thing. This is the overall coordination of an organization's response. So this has the overall pieces and contains an overall view of how they should be responding. So this is for the crisis management. Let us see it once again. Business resumption planning is the operational aspect. Disaster recovery planning is the technical aspect, and crisis management provides an overall goal or the overall picture of how they should be dealing on the event of a crisis. So next we are having a term which is called the business continuity life cycle. Business continuity life cycle. Business continuity planning has these three kits. And then we are moving on to business continuity life cycle. It's broken down into four broad sections. What is this? Business continuity life cycle. So first one, risk assessment. Everything begins with assessing of risk or threat or vulnerability. So first one is risk assessment. Next, okay, we are assessing the risk now. What do we do next? Determination of recovery alternatives. Okay, recovery alternatives, we have found it out. Then we had to implement it. What comes after implementation? Validation through testing and training and other processes. So business continuity life cycle is broken down into four broad and sequential sections, which is first is finding the risk assessment, doing our risk assessment. And we have found the risk. What next? Alternative recovery actions, determination of recovery alternatives. So recovery alternatives are found. What do we do next? Implement them. Okay, it has been implemented, then it has to be validated. So these are the four broad and sequential sections of business continuity life cycle. And then within each of these life cycle sections, the applicable resource set are manipulated to provide the organization with the best mix or critical resource quantities at optimum cost with minimum tangible and intangible losses. So we have all the critical resources and it has to be provided at the prices in the best possible mix so that the losses are also minimized. This is the goal of BCLC. Next comes the objectives and goals of business continuity planning. So what is up? We have all seen why we need BCP. What are the components of BCP? What are the objectives and goals of BCP is what comes next. The primary objective being, we know, to minimize the loss by minimizing the cost and to enable the organization to survive the disaster and to resume the normal operations very quickly. So this is a primary goal. Let us see it in points. The key objective of a BCP should be, we are going to play with some mnemonics here. So the key objective is to continue safety and reduce CID. The key objectives and goals of BCP are continue safety and reduce CID. So continue what? Continue critical business operations. Yes, critical business operations must be resumed very soon. Safety. It is not, we're not only going to be focusing on the operations, we'll also be focusing on the people, because people as well as the resources, and people more than the resources, they are valuable for an organization. Next is for the safety and well-being of the people on the premises at the time of the disaster. And next is to reduce what? Reduce the complexity of the recovery effort. And then CID, C for coordination, facilitate effective coordination of recovery tasks. And then I is to identify the critical line of business, and D is duration, minimize the duration of serious disruptions. So let us say it once again. The objectives and goals of BCP are continue safety and reduce CID, Continue what? Continue critical business operations. Safety. Safety and well-being of the people on the premises at the time of the disaster. Reduce what? Reduce the complexity of the recovery effort. And then CID, C for coordination of recovery tasks. And then I for minimize the immediate damages and losses. And D for minimize the duration of serious disruptions. We will come across a concept which is known as the downtime pain threshold. This all deals with minimization of duration of serious disruptions. So these are for the objectives and goals of business continuity planning. It is continue safety and reduce CID. Next, we are going to an important part of this entire chapter, developing a business continuity plan. Here we have 8 phases, which is the process through which we can develop the business continuity plan. What are those phases and what are the deliverables which we are going to take from each phases we are going to be seeing in detail. Now, the 8 phases are pre-planning, vulnerability assessment and general definition of requirements, business impact analysis, detailed definition of requirements, plan development, testing, maintenance, initial plan testing and plan implementation. Let us look at each thing one by one. First phase is pre-planning activities. We have a very popular saying, proper planning prevents poor performance. So everything is going to start with a sketch or a plan. So pre-planning activities. What are we going to do here? What is this? We are going to see the scope, schedules and the issues. So what is the scope, schedule, issues? Pre-planning, scope, schedule, issues. So you should refine the scope, develop the schedules and identify the issues. Pre-planning, scope, schedule, issues. So these are the activities which are going to be doing in the pre-planning stage. And then we have the important things. What are the deliverables of this phase? Deliverables is a document which will be created at the end of each stage. So it will be properly documented and should be submitted to the top management. So what are the key deliverables? The deliverables are document of a policy and the awareness program. Document of the policy. We can give a rough sketch of the policy and also the awareness program. So what are the aspects that are involved in our pre-planning activities? What is the scope, schedule, issues, scope, schedule, issues. What are the deliverables? Development of policy, awareness program. Development of policy, awareness program. So these are the deliverables from the pre-planning activities. Next comes, so we have planned it. Then vulnerability assessment and general definition of requirements. Vulnerability assessment. So assessing our vulnerabilities, okay? So reducing the possibility of disaster occurrence through reducing the possibility of disaster occurrence rather than concentrating primarily on minimizing the impact of an actual disaster. It is not like, okay, let the disaster happen, I can reduce the effect. No, we are going to address the very root of it, not letting the disaster happen in the first place. So this is the main goal of this step, vulnerability assessment. So reducing the possibility of a disaster occurrence rather than just trying to focusing on minimize the losses. So we're going to addressing the root. Okay, what are the key tasks? A thorough security assessment. Then improve and implement any existing plan. So already we should have been having an existing plan. So we should improve and implement new emergency plans. And then present the findings and the recommendations. And then define the scope. Develop a plan. Assemble project team. Okay, here we had define the scope, develop project schedules, and identify the issues. Here we are having security assessment. And then if there's any existing plan, we should improve it and then the improvements must also be implemented. Any findings and recommendations should be presented to the steering committee. And then to define the scope. Here we had refine the scope. Here we are defining the scope, developing a project plan framework, and assemble a project. So let us see what are the tasks again. One is security assessment, and the other one is existing plan, existing emergency plan. We should improve it and also implement it. And then we should present the findings and recommendation, and we should define the scope. Then develop a plan, assemble the project team. So these are the tasks which are taken in vulnerability assessment and general definition of requirements. Next, we are going to move to an important part, which is a business impact analysis. Business impact analysis. Okay. So here we have three tasks which must be taken. One is identify critical system, assess the economic impact, assess the pain threshold. So what does it deals about? Identify business impact analysis. So how it is going to impact the business? Before we are seeing how it's going to impact the people and everyone out there, but here we are focusing only on the business point of view. So what are the critical systems? What is the economic impact? And what is a pain threshold? Pain threshold is that how long can a business survive without that critical aspect? So these are the three main tasks that is done during this phase. That's business impact analysis. Critical system, impact, economic impact, and then pain threshold. Okay, so this report must be submitted. This is a deliverable. That is a BIA report, is a deliverable in this phase. It should be submitted to the steering committee. This report identifies the critical service functions and the time frame in which they should be recovered. That is the pain threshold. Okay, so we are also known now what are critical threshold, critical systems, how it is going to impact us, and how much is our pain threshold. So we all found it out. Having created an idea, now we are going to put our requirements. So next one is a detailed definition of requirements. So during this phase, a profile of recovery requirements is developed. This profile is used as a basis for analyzing alternative recovery strategies. Analyzing alternative recovery strategies. The profile is developed by identifying resources and the critical functions to support. So we have resources in one hand, critical functions the other hand. The resources which are required for the critical functions must be available. So both should be identified. And this phase is used as a basis for analyzing alternative recovery strategies. So disaster has happened, recovery strategies, so that you should also have the alternative recovery strategies and the resources required for the critical functions. So they could be the hardware, the resources could be hardware or people, documents, facilities. These are the resources for the critical functions. What is a deliverable? Is the definition of plan, scope, objectives, and assumptions. So because this is a detailed definition of requirement phase, the deliverable here is the definition of plan, scope, objective, assumptions. In our examination, I think it would be better if you present like the task undertaken, the key deliverables. We can like sort it out into two different sections where you present our answer. The key deliverable is definition of plan, scope, objectives, and assumptions. So this is for analyzing the alternative recovery strategies. So resources, critical functions. The resources which are required for the critical functions will be identified, and the deliverable is definition of plan, scope, objectives, and assumptions. Next one is we have defined the plan. We should develop the plan. So next is the plan development. So what does this deal about? During this phase, recovery plan components are defined and documented. Recovery plan components are defined and documented. It's not enough to just define. We have already seen it should be documented, just like in the Bcp manual, it should be documented. This also includes implementation, implementation of the changes and upgrading. So we could either implement, or if there's any existing emergency procedure plans, it should be upgraded. And definition of recovery teams, their roles and responsibilities. And here we also have the recovery standards are also developed during this phase. So what are the key things? Here the plan components, recovery plan components are defined and documented. Recovery plan components are defined and documented. And here we are also implementing and upgrading, and also we are defining the recovery teams, and the recovery standards are also developed. So defining, documenting, implementing, upgrading, definition of recovery teams and recovery standards are also developed during this phase. So this is for the plan development phase. And next one is the testing or exercising program. It is not enough you just develop and have it in our hand. It should also be tested, or it should also be validated. How are we going to do that? The plan, testing or exercising program is developed during this phase. Testing or exercising goals are established and alternative strategies are evaluated. Alternative recovery strategies will be formed at the detailed definition of requirement state, and at this stage we are going to test it. Testing strategies tailored to the environment should be selected. So whichever is going to suit our environment, suit our particular business environment, that only should be selected. And an ongoing testing program should be established. That should be on a continuous basis. Just like we will see in the other chapters, it should be a continuous basis. It should be on a concurrent or continuous basis. So this is what testing. So what happens here? Testing or exercising goals are established. First, we are establishing the goals. What is our testing goal? And then alternative testing strategies are evaluated, which are formed at stage number 4. So alternative testing strategies are evaluated. In the strategies which is going to suit our business environment, that should be selected. So first we're going to set the goal, then we're going to test it, and then whichever is going to suit our environment is going to be selected. This is for the testing or training program. Okay, we have tested and trained it, and everyone we are exercising. Then how do we upkeep it? It is not enough if it's a one-time process. It has to be a continuous process. Maintenance program. If it's not going to be maintained, it's going to be obsolete one day, and it's not going to be of any use because the organization is changing. It also has to change with the needs of the organization. Hence, we have the maintenance program. We say it is critical to the success of the actual recovery. The plan must reflect changes to the environment. So yes, everything is evolving around us, and this plan should also reflect the changes. In areas where change management does not exist, change management procedures will be recommended. If there's no this change management process, it should also be implemented. Okay, so this is what maintenance program is all about. This is critical for the success of the business. And then because it should existing business process are revised to take recovery plan maintained into account. Okay, so this is critical for the success of the business, and the plan must reflect the changes. It is critical, it must reflect the changes. If there's no change management procedures, it should be implemented. So 3 points. Maintenance program. Maintenance is critical and it should reflect the changes. Then change management procedures should be implemented if it is not in place. And next comes initial plan testing and implementation. So we have developed the plan, we have done a test check, and then we have maintained it. And then what is the next thing? Initial plan testing and implementation. Once the plans are developed, initial tests of the plans are conducted and necessary modifications are also done. And here we have some of the specific activities which should be done in the initial plan testing and maintenance. So here we are going to have a mnemonic test. For the test, the mnemonic is DISA CM. So what is DISA CM? DISA is also as related to SA. DISA CM. Defining, identifying, structuring, analyzing, conducting and modifying. So defining the test, identifying the test teams, structuring the test, analyzing the result, okay, conducting the test, analyzing the result, and modifying the plans. So we can use a mnemonic and it's very easy to remember. This is for the 8th phase. Can we go through it once again? Just the 8 phases: pre-planning activities, vulnerability assessment, business impact analysis, detailed definition of requirements, plan development, testing, maintenance, initial plan testing, and plan implementation. So when we present our answers, we are going to be presenting it like the task, the deliverables. Yes. Next, moving on to a very important and then very interesting part, components of Bcm process. Okay. Components of Bcm process. We have 5 stages here. To remember the stages, we are going to be using another mnemonic, which is Sachin develop testing and training for Mumbai Indians. So let us remember this. You can also note it down kindly, please. Sachin develops testing and training for Mumbai Indians. So S for strategy, D for develop, testing, training, and for maintenance, and I for information. Let us look here. Information collection. So information collection is done through business impact analysis and risk assessment. So risk assessment comes first, business impact analysis comes next. And then strategies of organizational strategy, process level, and resource recovery level. Organization, process, and resource recovery. Development and implementation. Implement management plans and business continuity plans. Testing and maintenance. Testing of Bcm plans, Bcm maintenance, and audit and review of arrangements. And then training, assessing the needs, designing and delivering trainings, and measuring the results. These are the stages of Bcm. Okay, and then we are moving to Bcm as a process. The management process enables a business continuity, capacity, and capability to be established and maintained. So we'll be coming across a few terms which all begins with CCC. So let us all remember it. So here Bcm process, continuity, capability, and capacity. Okay, and then Bcm as an information collection process. The activities of risk assessment process to do the prioritization of an enterprise products and services. The urgency of the activities that are required to deliver them. So we are going to assess the activities which are required and the prioritization of the enterprise products. So what are the products and services which we should prioritize, which is important for them, and what are the activities which are required for them. So to identify this, we have the information collection process. Next one is a strategy process, Bcm as a strategy process. The assessment of a range of strategies to an appropriate response to be selected at an appropriate level and during and after a disruption. So assessment of a range of strategy. The selection of strategy will take into account the process technology already present within the enterprise. So here's a key word for this. Finalization of business continuity strategy requires assessment of a range of strategies. Here, so we have appropriate response from an appropriate level. So for example, the top management should be involved for this, and it is within the authority of the top management to bring about such facilities in the event of a disaster. So it should be taken only by them. So appropriate level and appropriate response from the appropriate level. This is what strategy process is all about. And then the development and implementation process. Development of a framework and structure of the incident management. So the framework is that, so it has to be developed. So this is what it's about. And then testing and maintenance. Why do we need to test it and maintain it? So that it is complete and current and accurate. As we all have seen it before, it should be meeting with the changing needs And then there should be a change management process. So it should be complete, current, and accurate. And next is train. It is not enough if we do it on our part. The users should also be trained because they are the ones who are going to face a disaster and crises. Extensive training and incident management and business continuity all become a part of the enterprise core values. Okay, so this is what these are the stages as having put forth for Bcm. Okay, it's an information collection process so that we can know the prioritization of our products and the urgency of the activities which should be taken to deliver them. And next, it's a strategy process. What is the range of strategies which should be for? The appropriate level of management is going to do the appropriate response for that issue. And then development and maintenance of the management framework, testing and maintenance, because it should be complete, current, and accurate. And then the training process, because it's not enough if it's tested alone and it's in the paper. No, it has, the users should also be trained, and it has to be a part of the enterprise's core values. This is for the components of Bcm. Next is business continuity management process. Okay, so here we have the three other pachas of Bcm process, where organization structure, implementing business continuity, documentation, and records. So I've already seen, like, it is a strategy process, the top accurate level of management, and they should be giving the appropriate level of management, should be giving the appropriate response. So first, for that, we need to define the organization structure. Top level, middle level, strategic level is what it's all about. So organization structure. The organization should nominate a person or a team with appropriate seniority or authority to be accountable. And it should clearly define the person responsible for business continuity within the enterprise and responsibility. As we have already seen, BCP is a role of the top management. Without the guidance of the top management, it cannot be implemented, because it has to be put in the business core values so that the stakeholders can be benefited. So here we should have a person with appropriate seniority and authority. So there has to be one person of the appropriate seniority and authority to whom everyone should be accountable, and who is going to be accountable for Bcm policy. And his roles and responsibilities should also be clearly defined. So there should be a proper organizational structure for the Bcm process. Next is implementing business continuity. That is what is important, right? We are all learning this because business continuity is of main importance. Let us look into it. In establishing and implementing Bcm system, managers from each function site should represent their areas of operation. So the top level is there, and we are all having critical business functional areas. So the management from each function site should represent their areas of operations. So this is like the next tier level. These people are also responsible for the ongoing operation and maintenance. Maintenance, because it should be evolving as with the needs. As the need is evolving, they should also evolve. But training is required to enable a colleague to effectively carry out their Bcm responsibilities. This will be identified as part of the ongoing staff appraisal and training process. Okay, so this is for the next level. So what it deals with? Managers from each function should represent their areas. The management are going to represent their areas. They are going to be responsible for the ongoing activities and also for the maintenance. Yes, we know each managers or each function managers are responsible for the functions, ongoing functions, and also their maintenance. And there should also be an ongoing staff appraisal and training. Okay, very easy. Moving on to the next part. Okay, very easy. And then here, the implementation. In implementation, the major activities that should be carried out. So the major, what are the activities that should be carried out? Let us recollect through what we have seen before. Scope. Roles and responsibilities. Because the managers, they should be representing their functional areas and they should also be having their roles and responsibilities, definition of roles and responsibilities. And then engaging and involving all stakeholders, because bringing BCP into the business core values, the stakeholders should be benefited. So we should also engage and involve all the stakeholders. Next is testing, maintaining, reviewing, and updating. Testing, maintaining, reviewing, updating. Testing, maintaining, reviewing, updating. And next is managing cost and benefits. So we have to weigh between the cost and its benefits, and then convert policies and strategies into action. So what is this about? Implementing business continuity and maintenance. So firstly, the managers from each function site should represent the areas. Then that should also be, they are responsible for ongoing operation and also for the maintenance. Staff appraisal should be that. What other activities that is involved? First is scope, roles and responsibilities, and involving all the stakeholders. Testing, maintenance, reviewing, updating, cost and benefits, converting policies and strategies into action. So this is all about implementing business continuity and maintenance. Next one, Bcm documentation and records. Okay, because we already seen it should be well documented. Just like our Bcm manual, everything must be documented and it should be made in the form of records. All documents that form Bcm are subject to a document control and record control. So not enough we have it in the document. The document should also be controlled and the records should also be subject to record control. Okay, so here we have a list of documents which are required. Let us remove whatever is easy for us. BCP, Business Continuity Policy, Business Impact Analysis Report, Risk Assessment Report. This comes first actually. Risk Assessment Report, Business Impact Analysis Report, Business Continuity Policy, aims and objectives of each function. So next we are coming to the function level. So aims and objectives of each function, activities undertaken by each function. Then here we have business continuity policy, here we have business continuity plan, then we have incident log, and then training program. So we have a list of things. Let us keep in mind which is easy for each one of us. Okay. Then moving on to Bcm as an information collection process. So this whole process starts with a risk assessment and identification of our threats and vulnerabilities. Let us put in the terms of what is given here. In order to design an effective Bcm, it is pertinent to understand the enterprise from all perspective of interdependencies of its activities. It is important to understand the enterprise, okay, from all perspectives of its activities, external expert enterprises, and including. So we have to first understand the enterprise through these activities. So what are the enterprise's objectives, the stakeholders' obligations, the statutory duties, what are activities undertaken by them, the assets, their resources, what are the impact of the consequences of the failure of these resources, what are the threats. So first, Bcm collection process starts with an thorough study of the enterprise. So we are going to understand the enterprise from various other perspectives. One is that what is the enterprise objectives, stakeholder obligation, statutory duties or responsibilities, and the environment of which the enterprise operates. And then what are the activities of the enterprise? What are their assets? What are their resources? And then comes what are the impact of the threat and what happens as a result of the consequence of failure. And what are the threats? It's going in some reverse order. Let us remember it in one order. So history of the enterprise. What are the activities undertaken by them? What are the impact and consequences of what are the impact and consequences of the activities and what are the perceived threats? Okay, next one we are going to see is the business impact analysis report or the state business impact analysis. Business impact analysis is essentially a means of systematically assessing the potential impact and the resulting from various events or incidents. So business impact analysis is systematically assessing the impact and results from various events or incidents. So what is the impact? Why it happens is what we are going to be analyzing in this stage. Moving on. First, we all know this is going to be dealing with a critical system. So first, identify what are those critical systems. Then, assess the impact. What could happen? What is likely to occur because of those threats? Next, what is the maximum time period after the start of the disruption within which the activity needs to be resumed? So there has been a disruption. So within how much of time should we resume such critical businesses, and the minimum level at which the activity needs to be performed. It is not possible to resume a full-fledged or 90% or 80% production capacity or something like that. It has to be starting at a minimum level, so at least like 60%. Then identify the length of time within which the normal levels of operation need to be resumed. That is within how much of time can we come back to normal. So business impact analysis, here we have systematically assessing the potential impact, assessing of potential impact from various events. So what is the impact is what we are going to study here. There are so many events. How? First, critical system will be identified. Then we'll be identifying the impact. Then we'll be looking into the maximum time after the disruption with which we can start the activity. And then what is the critical business process? Minimum level of activity that which should be performed, and then within how much of time can we resume the normal level of activity. So this all comes in the business impact analysis. Next, we are always mentioned here critical activities. So how do we classify it as, how do we know, okay, critical nahi hai. How do we know it? We're going to be classifying it as vital, essential, and desirable. So we have some parameters through which we are going to be classifying it. Let us read it. BCP leaders and Bcm team leaders in consultation with respective function owner shall carry out business impact analysis for infrastructure and business transaction. Business impact analysis will result in categorization like vital, desirable, and essential. So after we have performed the business impact analysis, we can say, okay, this impact is not going to disrupt us more. Oh, if there's going to be a minor disruption, there's going to cause a heavy loss for us. So we can classify it as vital, desirable, and essential. The mnemonic here we are using is wait. Vital, essential, and desirable. Vital is of utmost importance. Essential is the second level, and desirable is, okay, if it's that, it could be better, but not that it is of critical importance. So this part, you can just give it a read, and I'm sure I can deal with it very well. And then we are also classifying the likelihood of its occurrence. So we're doing a probability, and we say, okay, this is going to definitely happen. This is likely to happen. This is unlikely to happen. Just think of a rain forecast. It's unlikely to rain today. It's likely to rain today. There's likely going to be showers, and there's definitely going to be heavy thunderstorms, something like that. And next one is, what are the consequences? How are we going to classify our consequences? First is trivial or insignificant. Okay, the risk is going to be of near negligible amount. Okay, the loss are very minimal and we can rectify it. It is not mission critical. And the next one is minor. Result in some damage, but the damage is not too significant. First one is trivial. Trivial is negligible amount. Next one is minor. That is result in some damage, but not too significant. Next one is major. Major is large consequences. Next is catastrophic. These are the risks which can make the project completely unproductive and unfruitful. Okay, so we are classifying the consequences. First is trivial or insignificant, which is it causes near negligible amount. Trivial or insignificant is negligible. Next is minor. There is some damage, but it is not too significant. Next is major, which can lead to greater amount of loss, or classified as critical. So here we have the critical aspect, that is a major and the catastrophic ones. Major is significantly large consequences, and then the catastrophic is which can make the project completely unfruitful or unprotective. Okay, so this is about the classification of the consequences of a disaster. And next we are coming about risk assessment. We have always said it all begins with risk assessment. What is that? Risk assessment is the assessment of the disruption to critical activity. So these are the two main keywords which are always talking about. Critical activities, risk assessment, vulnerabilities, threats. So first we have to identify the critical activities, perform a risk assessment on them. That is, what is the amount of disruptions that happens to these critical activities. So how do we do that? We have two terms here: vulnerabilities, threats, and other impacts. Okay, vulnerabilities. What's vulnerability? Vulnerability might occur as a weakness within our resources. So vulnerabilities is because they are subject to some weakness. They are subject to some inherent weakness. They're making themselves vulnerable for it. Okay, and impact might result from the exploitation of vulnerabilities by threat. We have the threat. Threat is, say, in our organization, our building is not high rise. That is a vulnerability. What is a threat? Flood is a threat. So what is the impact? Flooding, loss of computers, loss of people, because it happened in Chennai long ago. So these are the impact. Impact might result from exploitation of vulnerabilities by threat. So these are the key terms. And here we having some MCQs hiding here. So it is important that we go through a thorough read of this portion. Next is the BCM as a strategy process. We have also seen it before. That is a develop and documentation of a series of plans. Here also you can give a thorough read here again. And then is a BCM development and implement. BCM is a development and implementation process. As I already told you, there will be few terms which start with C here. First we had continuity, capability, and capacity. And here we are having confirm, control, contain, communicate, and coordinate. So for the information, BCM, development and implementation process, we have development and implementation process, we have confirm, control, contain, communicate, and coordinate. What are those? Confirm, control, contain, communicate, and coordinate. And for this process, we have two kits. Okay, they are incident management plan and business continuity plan. So development and implementation plan has two subparts, which is incident management plan and business continuity plan. So what is the incident management plan? As the word defines, it's understood from itself that what happens in the phase of the incident. What happens at the phase of the incident? How are we going to react on the phase of a particular incident? To manage the initial phase. Okay, to manage the initial phase. What it needs? Top management support, because Bcp policy itself is an activity by a top management, and hence there should be a support from the top management for budget, maintenance, and training. Okay, and they should also be flexible, feasible, relevant, easy to read, because the one who is going to act is going, not the top management. The one who is going to act is at the bottom level. So it should be easy for them to read and understand, and provide the basis for managing all possible issues. Issues should be resolved and should serve as a guide for that. Okay. So what is the incident management plan? It is the initial plan. It should have the top management support. Why? For budget, maintenance, and training. What else should be there? It should be flexible, it should be feasible, it should be relevant, and also it should be easy to read. Next one is the business continuity planning. We have already seen it. It is to recover or maintain its activities in the event of disruptions to normal business operations. Okay, so this is for business continuity management, development, and implementation process. Next, we are going to be seeing the testing and maintenance process. Okay, so recollecting our phase 8, which is testing and implementation. Let us go through these points again. What are those? What are the activities that are done in the testing and implementation process of BCP? Here we have DISACM, defining, identifying, structuring, analyzing, and modifying, communicating. Okay, so the same points are going to be repeated again here in the implementation and testing of Bcm process. Here we have defining, identifying, structuring, conducting, analyzing, and modifying. Next is a maintenance. You already seen it before. Same thing, we are going to be repeating it here. It has to be updated because it should reflect the current changes, and we should have a change management process. If it's not going to be updated, it's going to be obsolete one day. So what are the tasks which are undertaken for the development of BCP? For the maintenance tasks, so who has the ownership and responsibility for maintenance? Whose role is, we say it has to be maintained, has to be maintained. Who is going to do that? Who has the ownership and responsibility for the maintenance? And where do we know that, okay, this needs maintenance now? So it's called as a maintenance triggers. Maintain, who has to, whose ownership and responsibility it is to maintain, and when should it be maintained? And then what is the maintenance regime? So what are the procedures or the activities which should be followed in maintenance, and the maintenance process to update the plan, and then implement the version control procedures to ensure that the plan is maintained up to date. So here we have the activities, ownership and responsibilities, what are the triggers, so how do we know it's up to date, and what are the processes, and implement version control procedures. So it's very easy. Next is reviewing Bcm arrangements. So we are going to be validating, we already seen validating. So how do we review the arrangements? How do we know if it's correct? How can we verify it? What are the parameters are needed to verify the Bcm arrangements? So first, what we are seeing here, let's come back to page number 4.13. Information collection process. First, we studied about the objectives of the enterprises, then the activities, then the threats and the impact. So the objectives, activities, threats, and the impact. So starting with that, we'll have to identify what are the key products and services. We'll start with here. What are the policies and strategies? Enterprises policies and strategies, same as objectives. And then activities, functions and roles and resources. So what are the key products and services? So policies and strategies, products and services. And then are these solutions effective and up to date? Okay, because it should be up to date, fit for purpose, and then appropriate to the level of risk. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to face so much. No, maybe we should not be overestimating it also. So appropriate level of activities for that appropriate level of risk. And then the enterprise Bcm maintenance and existing programs have been effectively implemented. It should also be properly implemented. The maintenance should be implemented, and there is also testing, training, and awareness. It should be communicated, and that the change control process are in place and operate effectively. So here we have the key areas through which we should be verifying it. So first one is the what are the policies and strategies? Next is the key products and services. Next are the solutions effective, up to date, fit for purpose. And then is it maintenance? Is it implemented? Is there proper training and awareness? Is it communicated? Do they operate effectively? Give another thorough read. It is very easy to remember these points because it is all repeated again. Next, the training process. We already seen the users should be trained because, and it is not enough if it's just documented. What is a training process? An enterprise with Bcm uses training as a tool to initiate a culture of Bcm. So through training them is how we instill that concept of Bcm in them. So what should we do then? First, we should develop a Bcm plan which is more effective. And then we should provide confidence to the stakeholders and then increasing its resilience over time, minimizing the likelihood and impact of disruptions. So we are instilling a culture of Bcm in the mind only through the process of training, but they become aware. We are not aware of the thing which happens. Bcm manual is all done by the management. So how the next functional areas they get to know about this only through the training process. We should develop them effectively, provide a confidence to the stakeholders, increase the resilience of it over time, and minimize the likelihood and interruptions and impact. Okay, and it should be supported by already seen leadership from senior personnel. There should be one person at the top management who is going to be supporting it for the budget and maintaining it up to date and everything. The roles and responsibilities should be assigned, awareness should be raised, and skill training must be there, and the plan must also be exercised. Training, awareness, and competencies. You can give a one read, and this part is very easy to handle. Next comes an important part which is often asked in our exams. Okay, so we'll be looking at the most important and also the most easiest part. Now, what are the types of plans? We say Bcp1 plan. What are the types of those Bcp plans? Emergency plan, backup plan, recovery plan, test plan. For the four types: emergency plan, backup plan, recovery plan, test plan. So what is an emergency plan? Emergency plan are the activities to be taken immediately when a disaster occurs. So emergency plan. So emergency, what should be done immediately when a disaster occurs? The management must identify those situations that require the plan to be invoked. So we have already seen in maintenance, we have one point, the maintenance triggers, right? And here also, what should trigger the emergency plan to be initiated, will be done by the management. So this emergency plan has four aspects. One is the who aspect. So who should be notified immediately? Who do we tell, oh, emergency here, now it's there. So who should be notified? And then, okay, they have been notified. What are the actions that should be done now? Okay, we are seeing what are the actions, and you have to evacuate the place out. Okay, it's not like, oh, I'm taking this Bcp training. Oh, it says I should go now. Should I be really leaving this place? Yes. Evacuation procedures, and then the return procedures. When is it safe to return to that particular place? So types of plan: emergency plan, backup plan, recovery plan, test plan. Emergency plan is immediately on the phase of a disaster. And then what are the triggers? That is, when should it be invoked, will be laid down by the management. And then we have four aspects. First is the who aspect, who should be informed. And then what are the actions to be done? And then we should leave the place, which is evacuation procedure. And then we should return back when everything comes to normal. That is a return procedure. And then we are moving on to the next plan, which is a backup plan. Backup plan. It specifies the type of backup to be kept and the frequency with which the backup is to be undertaken. Backup plan. So what is the type of backup and the frequency with which the backup should be kept? Because we all do it, not just the organization level. We all have a backup of our photos. We all have a backup of our important downloads or for important songs and everything. So backup plans. So what are the type of backup and the frequency of the backup, the procedures for the backup, and where the backup should be kept, and the site where these resources are assembled. so that in the event of the disaster, they can go there and resume their operations there. So emergency planners, we are evacuating, and the backup planners, we are going to the place where this backup is stored. So backup how? Backup, what is the type, frequency, and the procedure, and where the location, and the site where all these people will meet and resume their operations. Okay, the backup plan also needs continuous updating. The backup plan needs continuous updating as change occurs. Just like maintenance plan, this also needs continuous updating. And more than one knowledgeable person should be in task. So if say there should be at least two persons who are aware of this backup plan, because if one is injured in the event of a disaster, the other must be ready to jump in. So there should be more than one person knowledgeable. So this for the backup plan, we have the type, the frequency, the procedure, the location, the site. It needs continuous updating, and more than one person should be aware of this backup plan. Okay, then emergency has happened, we have left the place, we're moving to another place, we are working there. Then what happens next? The recovery plan. This is to restore the operations quickly. That is, the recovery plan sets out the procedures to restore. We should come back to normal with the minimum possible time. Should identify the recovery committee. Here we have another person for the recovery committee that should be responsible for working out the specifics of the recovery to be undertaken. So we have the recovery committee. They should work on the aspects of what are the recovery to be undertaken. Guidelines on priorities, which is important. Mission critical items should not only be faced in the time of an emergency, not only be rescued at the time of an emergency, but they should also be restored to the normalcy after the event of a disaster. They should be recovered, and what is the priority for it is what is done in the recovery plan. So emergency plan, immediately when disaster occurs. Backup plan, we are going and working in another site, and then it also should be continuously updated. And the recovery plan, restoration of the operations. What is the next one? Test plan. What is a test plan? The purpose of test plan is to identify deficiencies. So we are testing the other plans for its deficiencies in the emergency plan, backup, and recovery plans. Yeah, simulated and specify the criteria. So it is like a mock trial. That is what is done here. It is being simulated and specify the criteria. Okay, so let us read. It must enable a range of disaster to be simulated and specify the criteria. What are the backlogs that we are going to be placing here? Sometimes the top managers feel that if you are going to carry out these test plans, normal operations is going to be disrupted, or when you are going to develop this test plan, that itself could lead to a disaster. So these are the backlogs that we face in the test plan. Next, to facilitate testing, a phased approach can be adopted. This we will be seeing also in the phase of SDLC. That is a phased approach, a step-by-step approach can be adopted. Okay, so these are the types of plan. First, we have the emergency plan, backup plan, recovery plan, test plan. Emergency plan, immediately when a disaster occurs. Backup plan for the type, frequency, procedures, locations, and the site. And then recovery plan, restoring the operations. Test plan to identify the deficiencies in all other plans. Next is the types of backup. We have seen backups. What are the types of backups? Full backup, incremental backup, differential backup, mirror backup versus full backup. What is a full backup? It captures all files on the disk. It captures all files on the disk. Everything is going to be backed up again and again. Okay, and all files visited later in the backup job will be backed up again. Full backup captures all files on the disk, and all designated files in the backup will be backed up again. So for any good backup, there has to be at least one full backup. So we should all be starting with one full backup. So it captures all the files on the disk. Next one is What are advantages and disadvantages? The advantages are the restores are fast and easy. It is easy to maintain. So full backup, okay, this full backup, it's very easy to restore and it is also easy to maintain. But what are the disadvantages? It is going to take a very long time because of the full backup. The restoration is also going to take a very long time. And yes, because every time we are going to do a full backup, the storage space is going to be occupied a lot. It is also going to be redundant but repeatedly, hence resulting in inefficient storage of inefficient use of storage. So it is going to take very long, and then so much storage space is going to be consumed. It's going to be redundant, and it is an inefficient use of storage. What is this? Our next one, incremental backup. Incremental backup captures the files that were created or changed since the last backup, regardless of the backup type. So doesn't matter if the last backup is a full backup or differential backup. This is just a backup which happens after the previous backup, regardless of the type of backup. Okay. So what are the advantages? This is faster, efficient use of storage. That is just turning our code back. Faster, efficient storage, efficient use of storage space, and then the restores. Okay. For the incremental backup, the advantages are faster backup, efficient use of storage space, and the disadvantages are restores are slower than with the full backup and differential backup, and the restores are a little more complicated because it is a backup which happens regardless of the last type of backup. The order with which it is going to be restored again is going to be a little bit complicated. Then what is the differential backup? Differential backup Differential backup fall in the middle between full backup and incremental backup. So differential backup is something between full backup and incremental backup. Here, differential backup stores files that change since the last full backup. Here we have incremental backup, which is regardless of the backup type. Here we have differential backup, which is after the last full backup. So with differential backup, one full backup is done first and subsequent backup runs or changes made since the last full backup. Okay, so full backup is fully backing it up. Incremental backup is from the last backup, regardless of the type of backup, and then differential backup is after the last full backup. Here, what are the advantages? It is faster, efficient use of storage space, and restores are faster. Next, turning over the quote again for the disadvantages. Backups are slower, not as efficient. Restores are slower. Restores are a little more complicated. And give a thorough read here. It's very easy to grasp it because points are just repeating and then the code is just being turned over for the advantages of being a disadvantages. Okay. And then going on to the fourth type of backup, which is a mirror backup. Mirror backup is, as the name suggests, a mirror of source being backed up. So it is just a copy of one backup kept in the other place. What happens here? If this backup is going to be changed, this is also going to change. If here there's a deletion, here also there's going to be a deletion. So we have to be careful of what we are going to be modifying in each of the places. Okay, that is what is given here. So it's a mirror of the source being backed up. The source is deleted, the file is eventually going to be deleted, and the mirror backup also. So we'll have to be very careful. So what are the advantages? It's very clean, doesn't contain old and obsolete files. What are the disadvantages? There's a chance that the file is accidentally deleted or subroutine. So then the backup will also be deleted. So these are the types of backup. Yeah, full backup, incremental backup, differential backup, and mirror backup. Full backup captures all files. Incremental backup is backup of the last which is done after the last backup, regardless of the backup type. And differential backup is after the last full backup, and then the mirror backup is just a mirror or a copy of the source. Okay. Next, we have the alternative processing facility arrangements. What is this? Here we have cold site, hot site, warm site, reciprocal agreement. So alternative processing facility arrangement. So what is a cold site? If an organization can tolerate some downtime, cold site backup might be appropriate. So if they can have, okay, they have some downtime which they can, that the pain threshold is a bit more higher, they can go for this cold site. So the cold site has all the facilities needed to install a mainframe system, rice floors, air conditioning, power, communication lines, and so on. Okay, an organization can establish its own coal site facility or enter into an agreement. So coal site, that is, if they have a bit more of higher price threshold and if they can tolerate some more downtime, they can go for this. That is, they have all the infrastructure for the mainframe, rice floors, air conditioning, power, communication line. So it is a home away from school. That's a coal site. What's a hot site? If the fastest recovery is critical, that is, they don't have much of downtime and they don't have much of a pain threshold, then they'll have to prefer the hot site. That is, all hardware and operation facilities will be available in the hot site. In some cases, software, data, and supplies might also be stored there. A hot site is expensive to maintain. They are usually shared with other organizations that have hot site needs. Here we have only things which are very, very critical, that is the hardware and the operational facility. So for hot site, we have only the hardware. The hot side, we have only the hardware and the operational facilities. For the cold side, we have infrastructure, air conditioning, cold sub cold, power, communication lines, and so on. A home away from home. Hot side, we have hardware and operational facilities. Okay, is expensive and it can also be shared with other organizations. A warm side is between the hot side and the cold side. It's a balance between both. It has all cold side facilities and in addition to hardware that also might be difficult to obtain. Okay, and then what is a reciprocal agreement? It is like two or more organizations agreeing to provide backup facilities to each other in the event of one suffering a disaster. That is lending a shoulder to a friend in distress. So two or more organizations might agree to provide backup facilities to each other in the event of one suffering a disaster. So what are the alternative processing facilities? We have cold side, we have hot side, we have warm side, we have reciprocal agreements. Cold side, we have all the facilities needed, mainframe, AZs, rice floors, telecommunication lines, and everything. Then the hot side, we have the hardware and only the operational facilities. Then is the warm side, which is a combination of both the cold side and the hot side. And then is a reciprocal agreements where two or more organizations agree to provide backup to each other. Next, this disaster recovery procedural plan. So what are the contents of a disaster recovery procedural plan? This is kind of a story. You can remember it in the way of a story. So, but there are three key procedures which we should remember. First is the emergency procedure, next is the fallback procedure, and next is the resumption procedure. This is just nothing but technical term of what we have seen before, as we have seen in the types of plans, emergency procedure as in the emergency plans, and then the backup plan. So that is, we are moving on to the other place, and then the resumption plan, that is a recovery plan stage. So emergency procedure, fallback procedure, resumption procedure. Then what happens is that we can remember the other points or form of a story. So there's an emergency. We should be aware of it. Who are we going to call? And then what are the things that should be undertaken next? Let us go through it one by one. So there's an emergency. Then there should be an awareness for it. Then what are the individuals who should be aware of those plans? And then the who are we going to contact then? The vendors, the phone numbers of other employees, the police, and the medical procedure should be followed. and insurance is related to that, and then moving on to the backup. It is very easy to remember as we flow through one stage, one after one. In your good read and sure easy to remember. Next comes our part, which is the audit of Bcp or DRP. So for this, we are going to use our mnemonic, which is EBT, revise, opening balance, unnecessarily, DR instructions, bina. So audit. So for audit, EBT revises opening balance unnecessarily, DR instructions, bina. So what is EBT? Audit of EBT, that is the plan exists, E for existence of the plan, B for backups, and T for testing. So EBT, what does it mean? The plan exists, B for backup, T for testing. And the next one is R, that is revised here, we've given as revised, but it is resources. So what we are all talking about is the critical activities and the resources which are necessary to maintain the critical activity. So next is the resources. Next is OP. What is OP? Obtain and review the existing plan. Obtain and review the plans for disaster recovery. So review the existing plan and then review the existing business impact analysis also. And next one is B, that is the background, gather background information to provide criteria. What is a background information? Next one is understanding the methodology used to develop and who participated in the development effort. So this has been developed, but who has developed and how it was developed and what method it was developed should be audited. And next one is DR. What determines the plan is dated? Is the plan dated? Okay. And then there should be also review of the existing plan. Next one is I, that is an interview functional area managers. Next one is BINA, B for building, utilities and transport. IN for information technology. A for the administrative procedures, and these are our audit areas of Bcp. Let us go through it one by one. What is a mnemonic? EBT revise opening balance unnecessarily DR instructions. Bina. What is ED? What should we be auditing? First, if the plan exists. Audit if the plan exists. Next, B, determine the backup procedures. Then T, audit of the test plan. Then R for the resources, critical activities, resources. We audit the resources. Okay. Then O, obtain and review of the existing plan. And then B for background of the information. And then U for understanding the methodology to develop and who developed it and how it was developed. B for is it dated each time when it is revised. And then R for review of the existing impact plan, business impact analysis. And then I for interview of functional managers. And then B for building, I for information, and A for administrative procedures. Here we'll have to give a thorough read and all the points can be grasped. It's very easy to present with this form of a mnemonic. And with this, here we end our chapter, business continuity planning and disaster recovery planning. And next we'll be catching up with the next chapter. Thank you so much for watching.